3, 2, 1, blast off! It's time for AutoCAD 101 again. Okay, this isn't nearly as exciting as a NASA launch. All right, let's bring AutoCAD over. Whoops, there we go. Didn't want to grab hold today. At this point, we've got the ability to dimension shapes. We haven't really talked about using radiuses and things like that, but they're pretty fairly simple. Let's draw a circle real quick. So if we go to up here, dimension, radius is pretty simple. You pick on the circle, tell it where, where you pick is where it's going to place it. We really don't want these. We'll use leaders, and so we may have to make a different dim style with the arrowhead set to closed filled for these. Another thing about these is you can create center marks. You can also do diameter, but remember, wherever you pick on the circle is where it's going to place it. And of course, we talked about the aligned dimensions, but you've got a number of things here. You can do angular. You can go, like if we wanted to know the angle between these two objects. So there's a lot of different things you can do with that. But what if we want to do the little arrows for our text, because we've got to identify all the things on on our drawing. To do that, there's two commands. Well, there's actually three, but one's really old. No one uses it at all. But there's QLEADER, which stands for Quick Leader, and there's MLEADER. QLEADER had some trouble, and it's an older command, so they updated it with MLEADER, which I still don't think has solved the problem. Both of these things have the arrowhead attached to the text, and that's where the problem begins. With QLEADER, you can just turn the text off and just make the arrows, and that's really useful. And that's what I'm going to recommend we do. The other thing with multi-leaders, with MLEADERs, you have to make a dimension style or a leader style for every single scale, just like we did with dimensioning. For QLEADER, it uses whatever the current dimension style settings are. If you remember, in our dimension style, the symbols and arrows tab, one of the things was the arrowhead. These tick marks here, the arrowheads were architectural tick, and then it had leader, closed filled. The nice thing about that is now with QLEADER, it's going to use that setting right there. So we don't have to do anything special for this. So let's look at QLEADER. QLEADER, you notice it comes up real easy, QL. The first thing it's going to do, if you haven't used these before, you're going to have to do the settings. So you could hit S, but that's the default, so just hit Enter, and it'll bring up the settings dialog box. Its default is to attach multi-line text. Hit None. And then go over to leader, line, and arrow. We can tell it we want a straight line. We don't want a spline. We don't want curvy things. We want a closed-filled arrowhead. We want the first segment to be at any angle, like this part right here. And we always want the second part to be horizontal. We don't have to toggle our F8 constantly. So if I place one now, click, 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 I'm done. Ooh, hey, cool. It's not going to prompt me for text or anything else. If we had set that mText thing, it didn't make me make a text box, and I'd have to enter text. Here's why that's not handy. Let's make one real quick. So settings, annotation, mText. And now it's going to ask us for the text width. I don't know, we'll set 4, I don't know. All right, so here's my text. I can adjust the text width, which is handy. Granted, this is real nice if you have like lines where there's more than one line in here. But one thing that happens in an office is very often we take details we have and we modify those for other details. So now we're going to have to, or we've added more and more notes, and so now the note that was on this side, I need to put on the other side now. Watch what happens. Now, if I just had, let's put some M text here. Let me make the little box. Klingon again. Whoops. I just have to hit enter. Oh, I didn't scale it up. Eek. Forgot about that. What is it? This is at 1 to 12. I'm trying to remember what this detail was at. I will just make it 9.6. Let's see what we get. Oh, it didn't take it. Let me highlight it again. I want to type the number here. Thank you. Now it's making me edit. Here, let's just do a new one. M text. Some other reason why I kind of like just the text command, but we'll talk about that in a minute too. I want to enter. All right. Zoom out. Okay, here's our text. Let's move it where it's in place. Now, if I was to take these, because this is the one that I made with where the multi-line text is attached. Granted, it's convenient. I didn't have to scale up my text because it took whatever the scale of this of the dimension style and use that number. But let's go mirror this because we need to now put, make this note. Oops. Mirror. Pick this vertical line. First of all, it's changed my alignment of the text, which isn't hard. I can fix that. But if I do anything else half the time, I'll get this funny underline under here, and let's see if I can get it to do it. Where do we get it? Let's go to properties. And I don't want it at justify top right. I want it top left. So I can change this, and sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Because sometimes you get this funny little underline and it's all messed up. So these are just kind of a pain. Now watch what happens when we do that with this one. Mirror. And we go and change to top left. If that multi-line text is attached, I'm trying to hit escape all the way behind me because I'm in a kind of a funny desk. Look what it's done to the leader. And it's fixable, but it's just kind of a pain. Sometimes it isn't fixable. Sometimes it will just mess it up completely. I personally like them separate. What I'll do is I'll make one. I'll make the text usually. Then I'll come in here and put my leader in. You'll notice how easy it is to edit the leaders. You can just grab the grips, adjust them as you needed. And then what I'll do is I'll copy my text up with my ortho on, and I'll just do the same thing with my leader. So once you've made one, it's fairly easy to place all the rest of them. And they're nice and aligned. We want that alignment. That's good drafting. So rather than doing mirror, the better thing to do is copy your text over to this side. We'll put some more leaders over there. Now we can just mirror just the leader, a little safer. Move. Here we'll have it poked to here. You really don't want to do that kind of thing. That's kind of bad drafting. And then I can just copy it down. copy it down. Thank you. Like so, and use it that way. I find this a lot faster than each time going through all the settings and making my boxes for the text and everything else. The other thing is, when you're doing that individually, how do you line those boxes up? Now, yes, you could go to the non-plot layer and come in. These all have an insert point. Put a non-plot layer in here. Home, layers, ZNP1. But then I'm going to have to, for each one of these, I'm going to have to, let's do another one. So QLEADER, pick here, 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 make my text. That's fine. Oh crud, now I'm going to go move, pick that insert point, oh, it'll work, perpendicular to this, and so now it lines up, and now I have to arrange my, because remember this moved with it, so now I've got to, put this where it's really supposed to be and everything else. I find it's easier to copy. So that's my preference. You may like these, go for it. Most people I know don't like having the multi-leaders, the text done at the same time, but that's up to you. The other command is called MLEADER. So, but before we can use it, we have to go define a style. Here, let's go down past all this. So the first thing to do is type MLEADER style. That brings up the multi-line style manager. Kind of starting to look a little bit like dimensioning, isn't it? We're going to make a new one, so we click new. We'll call it Leader 02. Oops, I really wanted caps. Just a minute. Oh, and by the way, when we're doing architectural detailing, we always use caps. We don't use little letters. So Leader 02, continue. Let's start with leader format. We want it to be straight. Your options are splines, which are all curvy. We don't want that. We want straight. Color should be by layer. Line type should be by layer. Line weight should be 0.09. We want it to be a nice little skinny line. And closed filled, and we'll make it 3/32 like we did in the dimension style. For leader structure, 2 leader points, they're talking about these points here, and automatically include a landing. If you don't, you won't get this little line here. And unfortunately, that landing distance is preset. We can never change it. We can change it once, but then they're always going to have this length of line, period. And then here's where you set the scale. In this case, we're making it twice as big, so we did leader 02, so we'll hit 2. For content, we want M text. Notice you can make it blocks, none, but M text. The text style, we're going to make Romans. We want to keep it horizontal. The text colors by layer, and the text height is 1/10. We want it to attach at the middle of the top line. If it's attaching from the right hand side, we want it at the middle of the top line too. Some very old hand drafting people are going to argue with you right now, because they will come from the bottom of the text. The problem with that is, sure, maybe back in the old hand drafting days, the idea was you want to read everything and then there's the arrow coming from the end of the text. That was the thinking. Nowadays, where we're using AutoCAD and copying details, constantly mirroring text, mirroring details, all this stuff, it's far better to always just come off of that first line and you're safe. That way it makes it very easy to copy. So there are things that are changing drafting standards. This 1/10 of an inch high text is a good example of that. Back in the old hand drafting days, or if you have a whole hand drafting person in your office, they're going to tell you 1/8 of an inch is standard. Well, 1/8 of an inch was standard because that was easy on your root. The ruler you had right there, the architectural scale had that laid out. It was very easy to make 1/8 of an inch high text. the idea about 1/8 of an inch high text was that was what was legible. If you made a half size set, that was about the, that 1/16 of an inch high text now, because it's half size text is about as good as you're going to be able to read. Anything smaller than that just got too small, especially in handwriting. With CAD, since we're scaling things up and down using a factor of 10, instead of trying to remember these weird numbers of how big is my text on a 1/8 inch equals a foot drawing, so it's 8 times 96, so that means that we don't have to remember that. We know if it's 1 to 96, because there's remember 1/8 inch per foot, there's 8/8 of an inch in an inch, 12 inches in a foot, so 8 times 12, 96. Just count the number of units and whatever thing you're using. If it's 1/4 inch, there's 48. If it's half inch, there's 24. If it's 1 inch equals a foot, well, it's obviously 12 because there's 12 inches in a foot. You take that scale factor, divide it by this 10 to get your text height. So 9.6 for the 196 drawing. 1/4 inch, where it's 1 to 48, that's 4.8. So that's why this is a much handier method. I'm way off topic here. So anyway, this landing gap is kind of like this little bit here. But because of that, this one, these are pain in the tush, but here we're okay. Let me make a new one. We'll call it Leader 12. Continue. We want that to be 12 now. And just like we did when we made our dimension style, we have to set that one current, and we'll close. And now we'll come back up here, and I'll go MLEADER, pick a point, and you notice I can't pick third point. I don't get that option. All I can do is put my text in now. And okay, and it didn't scale it up. Why didn't it scale it up? Did I not? I must not have picked the right one. So MLEADER, well, let's see, we'll just see if we can use the modify. Overall scale 12. Oh, I'm using 96 here. I'm thinking I've got an example detail here in a minute we're going to be doing with 1 to 12. So let me do it again. We need the 1/8 inch one for this drawing. So MLEADER style. I'm a step ahead of myself. New Leader 96. Continue 96. Okay. Set current. Close. Now I can click on that and change it to Leader 96. Don't have to redo it. And there we have it. But our idea about using these and doing this and just moving it up, F8. All I can adjust now is this placement. I can't move this because it moves the text. Thanks, guys. Well, let's try this side. Well, we can do it this way, but that's not the side we need that helps us. Now we just got our text out of alignment. Thanks, dudes. Thanks a whole lot. That's not the edge we wanted to move. So I find these useless. I stick with QLEADERs. They're easy. I don't have to create a whole separate style for QLEADERs. It's much, much easier to deal with. Being able to just grab an arrow and adjust it on the fly, that's a perfect solution. Whether you use mText here or just normal text, that's up to you. If you ever do this and you wish you didn't, remember you can always explode text. And if you want to put text back into mText, you can always come to the Express tools, and under text is convert to mText. So you can always get it back if you need to. For the most part, with details, that's not a big issue. Let me open the detail I was wanting to go to. This is a detail sheet off a job we're working on. And you'll notice I actually went ahead and put in my lines to make sure I had everything lined up so it looks nice. Generally, you don't want your leaders crossing through the dimensions if at all possible. Sometimes there's so many notes on a detail you're just stuck. Try not to go through the text if you do that. Try to come to where the lines, well, here, let's do it. Let me get my layer, home, layer, ADT and O for the notes. And I'll make a QLEADER. If you do, it still didn't go to the right layer. Try to come where you're not going. You don't want to do that. You don't want to come through the text. Try to go, if you absolutely have to, I didn't do my settings. They're still set for multi-line text. Perpendicular. Try to do this rather than right through the number. And don't forget, if you absolutely have to, move this outside and then do your leaders going through it if possible. One thing I didn't talk about is how do I get this back in position? There's a command called dim t-edit. If you pick on the dimension, it's going to ask you for where you want to put the new location. You've got this home option. If I hit H, it'll put it back where it belongs. Dim t-edit. Stands for dim text edit. What if I didn't want a dimension here? What if I wanted to put verify in field? Because we use that VIF a lot. I wonder if there's one on here. I don't see one. Okay, well, here's a good example. See, here's a dimension, but instead of putting a number, it put this with varies refer to plans. If you double click on a dimension, it brings up an editor. Normally, you'll see that. If you don't want it to display this, just hit a backspace and then put, what it with varies. I don't know what I put. I'll have to undo here in a minute so I don't screw my drawing up. And if I wanted to say plus or minus and then put the real number, if I hit a percent P, that'll give me a plus minus symbol, space, and then put a less than and a greater than, and when you do that, it puts the real dimension. I know this is a lot more information on too. I'll do a whole thing over these. But now you'll notice if I grab it is still updating that dimension, but now I have the text as well. We'll do this a lot in like stair details where we'll put 12 equal treads or something like that instead of actually putting the real dimension of the treads, things like that. Let me undo this. Come on. There we go, with various referred plans. You notice I've got a whole bunch of non-plot details. I've got non-plot lines that are the boundaries for my hatch. One thing we didn't talk about, like say if I wanted these to be bigger rocks, you can double click on it and go to properties, so we could change the scale here. There's actually a command to do that called hatch edit. And hatch edit brings up basically the hatch dialog box again, and you can play with it. You're like, hatch dialog box? We haven't seen that before. Yes, I'm going to talk about the hatch dialog box in another video, probably the next one. I like that hatch dialog box a lot. And there's I think it's HDGL mode or something like that. Some weird command, I'll have to find out. And you can get that to show it for you. Let's hit hatch edit again and I'll just bring it back up. I'll show you why I kind of like it. The nice thing about this is you'll notice we can find all the things possible. It updates it as we're down here, dots. And so we can see little pictures of what the thing kind of looks like. It's granted, it's teeny weeny. We can set the scale. All of it's right here in front of us as compared to going to, well, let's just hatch. And if you type it from the command line, you'll get this. But normally under the draw pull down, this hatch, I've got my HP whatever mode set. You'll get all that stuff up here on the tool palette, and I don't care for that. But I'm going to show you some settings that I prefer next time. I don't have an assignment for today. If you want, I've got a detail that I stripped down. It's something like this, and you can start playing, play with putting some leaders and text on. That's up to you. Just at this point, I would play with it, see which one you like. I think you're going to find that QLEADER is really the handiest. Whether you use text like I do or multi-line text, once you get one and just copy them up using the ortho, you're good. And then you can copy your your leaders all over the place and adjust them as needed. Like here, like I said, I want to be able to do that. You notice that's not that easy to do with those. You can't do that with those leaders at all, and it's just so much more convenient to play with it here. But that's up to you. It's also maybe up to an office you're in. They may say, no, we only do this, and well, when they tell you that, you nod and smile. But that's all for today. I'll shut up. Bye.